Inside the heart of a warrior is the heart of a rebel. Here we have Rebels Rebellion. And unfortunately, I only had 2 copies of Furion, so I had to use the Opus 6 proxy. But we're doing 3 copies of the new Furion. And this is Rebels. Rebels. So of course you've got Furion, Maria, Guy, and as I like to say his name, imitating Ashley from Resident Evil 4, Leon! 3 copies of Leon. So we have 3 copies of all the Rebels here. I'm just going to get out every Rebel just to start. 3 copies of Joseph. He's our Rebel searcher. He's going to search any of them out. So, I'm going to talk about Rebels just kind of in general here before I show the rest of the deck off, because this is what the core of it is meant to be about. I think 2 of these cards are great. Those 2 being Guy and Maria. I think one of them is fine, that being Leon. I think one of them is absolutely terrible, and that's Furion. Unfortunately, I don't know what they were thinking with this card. So, if you don't have a crystal, it doesn't do anything. Both of its effects rely on having a crystal. When he enters the field, you can pay a crystal. He gets 1,000 power, haste, first strike, and you draw a card. Now that's permanent. It doesn't fall off. So he'll permanently be an 8k first strike with haste, but man, it just feels so, I'm not going to lie, it feels very underwhelming. Then you can pay another crystal to bump his power by 3,000, but I personally haven't had that come up to be relevant very often in the game. With Furion, I think it should have been 2,000. I think he should have had Brave. Because here's the thing. So it says it lasts to the end of the turn, right? But the only thing that matters out of that is 1,000 and first strike. Because again, haste is only relevant the turn that forward comes in. Beyond that, it doesn't matter that he quote-unquote has haste. And in particular, what's really annoying about this card is cards that utilize crystals like this are really susceptible to not only just outright removal, of course if they break him, you have to put a new one in. That new one now also needs a crystal to do anything. They're really susceptible to things like Bounce or Typhon, which puts it back into your deck. Because again, now when you replay it, you have to have another crystal. And you're not always going to guarantee get your crystals. Even with the crystal generator backups you'll see in here, there's just often not enough crystals to go around. Sometimes I won't even see those backups, so I don't have a single crystal, which means he's just a body. Really missed the mark on Furion. I also would like to see, in general, a new kind of ability added to the game. Because, again, this is when he enters the field. So if you don't have that crystal when he enters, he misses that trigger entirely. It would have been nice to have, basically a one-time auto ability. So that even if he's already on the field, let's say you then play the crystal generator the next turn, that you could then spend that crystal to still give him his effect, to still give him his permanent buff, draw a card, etc. But it's not the world we live in. Nonetheless, one good thing I will say about Furion is he does have very lovely artwork, so yay! Good job for him. Enough about Furion. Let's talk about the other ones. So, we'll start in reverse. So Leon, I said he was kind of okay. Leon is great at damage 3 because he pulls Maria from the break zone, plays her right onto the field. Before then, you probably don't even want to use him. He then has a second effect which says, when a forward of power 10,000 or more you control attacks, draw 1 card. Well, so we've got power for days. If you get all of these out here together, I believe Guy hits 16,000 power. Furion, assuming you paid his crystal, I think goes up to 12,000. Maria will hit 8. And Leon, I think, hits 11. Which means when these 3 attack, you're drawing a card on attack. That feels really good. He's just not consistent enough to always get there, but the potential is there, and it does feel really awesome when the rebellion goes off. Maria is, I think, her and Guy are probably the best ones. Maria is going to give, it's very worded very specifically, the job rebel forwards you control gain 1,000 power for each rebel forward you control. Which means if Maria's out there by herself, she still gives herself 1,000. If Maria and Leon are out there together, she gives both of them 2,000. That's really nice. And then she says all the rebel forwards you control reduce all damage by 2,000, which makes these people incredibly resilient in combat. And if they have any kind of ping source, they're going to really need to do a lot to get rid of them. Maria is going to be people's main target because they know that she enhances the rest of the field, which is why it's so key that Leon can bring her out for free. Finally, Guy, who I think is probably the best one. He's just kind of the most efficient. So for each job warrior forward or card named warrior forward other than Guy you control, Guy gains 2,000 power. So when the other rebels are out, he's going to get +2, +2, +2. So he's going to get 6,000 for there, and then of course Maria's going to give him another 4. So that's fine. It's kind of weird too here. So they all have the job of both warrior/rebel, and Joseph is rebel/monk. I wonder why Guy specifically says warriors though. He cares about warriors, but Maria cares about rebels. Like, even in Opus 15, it's like they can't make up their mind what they want to do with these jobs or these cards. Like, just make them rebels. Yeah, there's a few other warriors out there, and originally I did try this deck with kind of a more warrior theme, but I just don't think there are any that are that good right now. And I'll say that about Furion too. Maybe in the future when we get more crystals, maybe Furion will become easier to get online, but even with his crystals, like, without his crystals, he's terrible. He's a blank card. Even with his crystals, I don't think he's that good. He's great with the whole team, but just by himself, nah. Anyway, however, what makes Guy great, when Guy enters the field, you may search for a job rebel of cost 3 or less and play it directly to the field. That doesn't specify forward, so Guy can search out Joseph. So sometimes if I have a bad opening, I'll have a single backup turn 1 and I've got Guy and nothing else to play. I'll just play Guy. Guy will search out Joseph. Joseph then immediately searches me out another one. Feels really good. Or on damage 3, my favorite chain play to do. If you're on damage 3, you put out Guy. Guy searches Leon. Leon brings back Maria from the break zone. So just by Guy entering, you get 2 rebels to the field. Maria's going to instantly buff them. So I think Guy goes up to like +7. He's like 13,000 just off of that. Him and Leon are both ready to start swinging and drawing new cards. Feels great. Guy is the man. Not to mention this beautiful artwork where he just wants to hang out with his birds. And then Joseph is, of course, your generic searcher, and it's on a burst, which is very nice. Usually, like, if, let's say I'm just playing Joseph early, you're always going to search out Guy. Guy is your starter. Maybe if you were lucky enough to get a crystal early and you wanted to start being aggressive, maybe you could do Furion. But again, you can have Guy bring Furion right to the field and immediately pay his crystal. So unless you've already got Guy in hand, I don't see why you would search for anyone else, because he's the starter. So that's the Rebel package. How do we best take advantage of that? Well, we're going to try a few things. First off, 2 copies of Philia. If you just want some type of board wipe in this deck, I'll mention Susano a little later on. He's obviously another option. However, what I like about Philia is, same with this next card in Braska's Final Aeon, notice something about those 2 cards? Oh yeah, look at that natural power, 10,000. So Philia or Braska's is on the field at the same time Leon is, they're going to draw you a card when they attack. And I can't tell you, if there's one thing in this deck that feels amazing, it's having Braska's Final Aeon on attack, kill something, and it draws you a card. Feels real nice. And then again, Philia will just get that as well, and it's your board clear. So, how do we get some of these crystals for Furion? 1 copy of Rem. Rem, unfortunately, will only get you the crystal when she goes to the break zone. Beyond that, she can activate another character on entry, so it can be used to kind of curve out your backups maybe a little more efficiently. Maybe you swing in with your Philia or your big guy, and then you reactivate it main phase 2. Keep him as a blocker. 3 copies of the Dragoon backup. There's your Wind way to generate crystals, and then 3 copies of the Samurai backup. There's your Fire way to get crystals as well. I also originally I did run Susano in here over Philia, but again, Philia works better with Leon, and sometimes they had some bigger forwards, 10k and above, that Susano couldn't deal with, and I had to use the Samurai, so I do like Philia a little better for that. 1 copy of Alira searches out a Chelinka or a Yuri. Well, there is no Yuri we want to use in here, but there are 2 copies of Chelinka. I like this card a lot. I like that it can be searched out by Illyria, and in particular, giving Braska's Final Aeon Brave and being able to attack twice, brutal. I've given it to Furion, where all 3 are out here. I give it to, now Furion maintains Brave, which he really needed because he has First Strike, and First Strike, again, matters in combat. Well, if he's dull, he can't do combat. But if you give him Brave, now that First Strike is relevant because he can stay active, and then he's going to draw you a card on the Leon swing. I did that just last night. Brave, Furion, attack, draw a card, attack, draw a card. Awesome. Really love Chelinka, and if you've got the spare CP, you can bounce her back to your hand to do it all over again. 1 copy of Zonde. It's just a cheap fire backup to get out. Good if they put down an early threat. You can just go ahead and knock it out for 7 damage, or for 7,000. Copy of Kuchaspel. There isn't a whole lot of ping in this deck, but I don't know, just in case it would be relevant, maybe if they have something that reduces damage. It's also just a cheap fire backup, but there isn't a lot of ping in here, so if you have a different fire backup you want to replace this with, by all means feel free. And 1 copy of Althea, again, best win backup you can put out in the game. We couldn't fit the Norse Talon package in here. Again, kind of similar to some of these other decks. Anytime you're using these crystal generators, they just take up so much space. But you could throw Norse Talon in here if you want. You could take out the Kuchaspel. I don't know if you're going to be able to get 2 copies in here. I guess you could get rid of a Chelinka, because then Norse Talon could search her out. But if you're Norse Talon to search out the Althea, I don't know. So say that what you will, but the thing is, too, if you're running a Lyra, I don't like to have only 1 target for a searcher. I'd like to have at least 1 more. But if you want to try to figure out a way to put in the Norse Talon package here, feel free, but obviously these 9 are kind of essential. So, 3 copies of Zidane, generically good card from Opus 3 that will probably never go away unless it gets banned or power crept. 3 copies of Terra. Terra was a late addition to this deck. I had something else, which I'll go over near the end. But I just like her because there's only, I think, 7 bursts total in this entire deck. Having Terra just recur a summon is very nice. And it may be relevant, the ping. So here are the summons we're running. 3 copies of this Diabolos. This slot more than the other 2. I'm going to come back to that because that one's the most up for debate. 2 copies of Amaterasu. It's one of the best summons in the game right now. Absolutely feel free to put a 3rd one in. I actually think the only reason there's 2 of this particular one is because I think I can't find my other ones right now. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going with 2, but you could absolutely swap this. As a matter of fact, you probably should because Amaterasu is just that good. 3 copies of Bahamut. This card is actually great. I just didn't think much of it because I was just like, whatever, it's another fire summon that pings. But it costing 4 and hitting for 9 is what we needed. Like, there was an Ifrit that hit for 9, but it cost 5, and that felt too expensive. 4 feels absolutely right, and if you don't have Furion or you have extra crystals, you can pay a crystal to reduce it by 2. Also really nice. I really love this Bahamut. This Diabolos, again, this slot could be anything. You could do Big Diabolos, you could do Alexander. You could do whatever you want. I kind of like it just because it's an incredibly cheap combat trick. Just for a single CP, you cut whatever forward it is to 3,000 power, and then any of your guys can basically take it out at that point. But this slot is very open, and despite what you're physically seeing here, I would recommend putting in a 3rd Amaterasu over the Diabolos. And rounding the deck out, 2 copies of Lednar. I don't really ever even cast this card. He's just here because he's both wind and fire CP, so it lets you discard for 1. And, yeah, you can get his fortune counter if you want to, but usually I'm trying to do the Rebel package, so I find that card very underwhelming. He's just there for CP. And 2 copies of Edge. This card actually isn't too bad, especially if they have a lot of ping damage, because you can protect your wind forwards. And in particular, you want to protect Maria. If Maria's out, all these other ones are already being protected. But Maria is who they're going to try to take out because she increases the strength of the rest of the deck, so Edge will help protect against her. If you wanted, you could take out Lednar for like 3 CP Legend Stola. That way you've got more protection, you've got some cancels. That's a really good choice as well. I'm going to talk about some tech choices now because really, again, the Rebel package only really consists of 5 cards, which is these 4 and then Joseph. And then if you want to count the crystal generators for Furion, you could bump that up to, 11. You could throw in a Cater. Again, there's not really a way to combine with ping a whole lot in this deck, so she's really just there as similar to Lednar, a way to get CP at both sources. You could do a Phoenix. I did try this card originally. I like it because it has good targets. I can get Zidane, Furion, Maria, Leon, everyone but Guy out of the Rebels. And unfortunately, of course, it doesn't work with Lednar because, that would require Lednar to be actually a good card. But being able to on their turn, all right, I'm going to hit that for 8,000, and then here comes Leon, who then also brings in Maria. That feels like a really good swing play. Or here comes Furion, and I have the crystal to pay for him, so you could try the Phoenix if you're feeling ambitious. Like I said, Susano is what I originally ran over Philia, but I find I value the 10,000 more. And in particular, and kind of similar to the Zondi, you really want to get to 3 damage in this deck, because Leon really turns online at 3 damage. So I prefer Philia, but you could do Susano. I had Blaze in here until just before this deck tech, but again, without other sources of ping, I found that unless it was the right matchup, he just actually couldn't kill anything. And if Blaze isn't killing anything on entry, then he doesn't do anything. You know, he's not really, he's a waste of 4 CP, basically. So I ultimately took him out. If you're at a locals where there's a lot of small stuff where you know your Blaze will be effective, you can throw him in there. And last, and certainly not least, because I find this card very interesting. Originally I ran this with General Leo. The idea was nobody can cast summons, and the forwards you control must block if possible, which normally would be a downside, right? However, these rebels are gigantic. And again, especially in the case of Furion, where if he's got first strike, you're happy to block. Like, that's no longer a downside, because yeah, go ahead, you can run into me. My guy is 16,000, 13,000. My Furion's, 10, 11, 12k, maybe as first strike. So, there was a theory there of that was the idea. And the problem was, at least for me in testing, I just found, and maybe this was just me, I just didn't ever want to cast General Leo because he then cuts me off my own summons. And you could say, well, okay, so don't run your summons, you could run some monsters. I tried that variation too, but guess what? There's no way to search Leo out in this deck, so I would do that, and then I would find I didn't even get General Leo. Or, even running the summons, again, you still have to naturally pull General Leo, so I'd find games where, well, I've got the Amaterasu and the Bahamut, so I can still freely cast them, and Leo just hasn't hit the field yet. So if you want to try him, if you can figure out a way to make him work, maybe he would work better in an Earth deck. I don't know, do you want your forwards to block? Again, that was the idea here, is that he will mitigate that downside, but maybe you don't. Maybe you want a deck where you can naturally dull your guys so they aren't forced to block. I don't know, but you're welcome to try that if you will. So yeah, there's the Rebels. They are an enjoyable little package. They're definitely going to need some help if they ever want them to go beyond this. Like I said, Furion. And the thing is, I've even looked at the old Furions, and none of them none of them really do anything. There's not really, there's just no consistency there. So anyway, I'll be quiet about that. That's the Rebellion. Here's what it is right now in Opus 15. Hopefully it'll get some more support in the future. Maybe Furion gets stronger as we get more crystals. Let me know what you think. Have some tests. Let me know what your version of Rebels looks like. And as always, you can check the deck list in the description below. Take care. Bye.